and the care and the concern of God. That's been the whole essence of the whole book up until now, and Job is going to put a final stamp on this before we move on. His friends have no reply after this. So, again, all of this, chapter 27, is Job replaying his righteous stance before God. Now, I will say, as far as we go, for those of us that we know we are trusting in Christ for our salvation, and even we can do two things. We can admit, three things. We can admit, yes, I am trusting Christ for my salvation and not my works. Because I am trusting Christ, I am safe and secure in Christ. And even though I am safe and secure in Christ and I'm trusting Christ for my salvation, I still have issues in my life that cause me to not love the Lord and serve the Lord the way I would love to or the way I should. We can all admit those if we're clinging to Christ. And so when Job goes back here, perhaps he's not necessarily clinging to Christ the way we are, because Christ has not yet been revealed to Job. He does know that he loves the Lord and he serves God the best he can, and with God's help, God will get him through. And so while we are not perfect and while we have sin in our life, we can stand on the bedrock that Christ has worked the work of salvation for us. All right? And this is what Job is standing on. Again, this is pre-Christ, but understanding that a Savior will come, because he's admitted that in chapter 16, I believe. So anyway, with all that being said, I've already got to the point where we're not going to get 5 chapters because everyone mocked me. So we will start on 27 and see how we go. Here we go, 27. This is Job speaking.
Job 27. Moreover, Job continued his parable and said, As God liveth, who hath taken away my judgment, and the Almighty, who hath vexed my soul? All the while my breath is in me, and the Spirit of God is in my nostrils, my lips shall not speak wickedness, nor my tongue utter deceit.
And Job admits, regardless of what's happened, I'm still alive. You know, we all have this sense, as a Christian, we all have this sense of wanting to live, even though we all understand that going to heaven is much better. But we also understand there will come a point in our life where death is imminent, and we will begin to understand that. And I refer back to my dad. You know, there was a point in time when he was sick that we were praying for God to heal him and take care of him. Then there came a point in time that we realized, God, just take him. But we were all clinging to that hope that he would have a few more years left. But we also understood that we're not going to pray him out of heaven either. And as the time went on, even though it was a short time, we realized he's not going to get better. We all accepted that fact and then turned it over to the Lord. But here Job is saying, even though all this has happened to me, the Lord has even vexed my soul, I still have my breath and I can still speak. That's a blessing. And I think for us as Christians, we need to take the blessings that we have. Verse 5, I think.
God forbid that I should justify you. Till I die will I not remove mine integrity from me. My righteousness I hold fast, and will not let it go. My heart shall not reproach me so long as I live. Let mine enemy be as the wicked, and he that riseth up against me as the unrighteous. For what is the hope of the hypocrite, though he hath gained, when God taketh away his soul? Will God hear his cry when trouble cometh upon him? Will he delight himself in the Almighty? Will he always call upon God? I will teach you by the hand of God. That which is with the Almighty will I not conceal. Behold, all ye yourselves have seen it. Why then are ye thus altogether vain?
So Job says, what good is the hypocrite? Can he truthfully cry out to God in his hypocrisy? Huh? Oh. Can the hypocrite truly cry out to God in his hypocrisy? Yeah, hypocrisy. Without changing his ways and actually relying on God? What is the purpose of being a hypocrite? And he goes on to say there, in verse 12, talking to his friends, you've seen it. You know how my life is. You know how I am. You've heard my protestations and my testimony as to how I love the Lord. So why are you become as vain or useless to me? And again, we've seen throughout this entirety of this study of Job that his friends were completely useless in any kind of support or help to Job. And so Job's saying, why would I be a hypocrite in this? I have no other help at this point but God. And that's the way I hope that we all look at this, that our hope fully comes from the Lord. And so to be a hypocrite about it and to say one thing and then act another is useless. There's no need of crying out to the God if you're not going to live for the Lord or love the Lord. You're just using him as a lucky charm, perhaps. And so Job said, there's no reason in me being a hypocrite, and the Lord has shown himself faithful. Verse 13.
This is the portion of a wicked man with God, and the heritage of oppressors, which they shall receive of the Almighty. If his children be multiplied, it is for the sword, and his offspring shall not be satisfied with bread. Those that remain of him shall be buried in death, and his widows shall not weep. Though he heap up silver as the dust, and prepare raiment as the clay, he may prepare it, but the just shall put it on, and the innocent shall divide the silver. He buildeth his house as a moth, and as a booth that the keeper maketh. The rich man shall lie down, but he shall not be gathered. He openeth his eyes, and he is not.
So speaking of hypocrites here, or heathen, his children be multiplied for the sword. In other words, generally speaking, now this isn't a hard, fast rule, but generally speaking, people that are born and raised in wicked households turn wicked. Not always, we understand that. But generally speaking, a wicked family is wicked. And so the hypocrite here, his children are born to go by the sword, or in other words, to be ruffians. Is that a word anybody uses anymore, ruffians? Oh, really? Well, I know it's a word, but do people use that often anymore? I don't know. Roughnecks. Well, that's the oil field. Yeah. Anyway, thugs. We'll put it that way. Yeah, thugs is a harsher term than ruffian. I've got a couple ruffians in the other room. I need to be careful. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, where am I at here? Where did I get? Oh, and though, when he dies, verse 15, he'll be buried in death, but his widows won't weep. I'm not going to go there. Though we heap up silver as dust, how would you like for the dust in your home to be silver? You'd be rich. I'm not wanting to insult anyone, but just understanding, you may think your house is clean, but you ain't pulled out your refrigerator in 2 years. But imagine if all that back there was silver dust. Yeah, longer than that. We pulled ours out not too long ago. Yeah, well, true, yeah. But the hypocrite here, even though his dust is just silver, and it says there his raiment is the clay. In other words, he's got everything he wants as far as clothing goes. He prepare it, but the just shall put it on. So when he dies, they're going to sell it at a garage sale. They're going to get rid of it. It doesn't mean anything to that guy after he's dead. The rich shall lie down, but he shall not be gathered. He opened his eyes and he's not. Now that's a metaphor. I mean, when he dies, he's just. Now again, we understand that there is a life beyond for both the heathen and the righteous, but generally speaking, you go to the grave, all right? So what is a purpose for a hypocrite and the very end? There is none. There's no reason of life for the hypocrite. For the one who claims to know God, but really, in truth, doesn't know the Lord, doesn't serve the Lord, doesn't love the Lord. Verse 20, I think. Yeah.
Terrors take hold on him as waters. A tempest stealeth him away in the night. The east wind carrieth him away, and he departeth, and as a storm hurleth him out of his place. For God shall cast upon him and not spare. He would fain flee out of his hand. Men shall clap their hands at him, and shall hiss him out of his place.
So the heathen, they don't live for the Lord. They really have no reason to live as far as that goes, because if you're not living for the Lord, life is just a waste. In verse 22, just for your mark there, so for God shall cast upon him, talking about the heathen, and shall not spare. The he there is God. No, I'm sorry. The he there is the hypocrite or the heathen, would fain flee, in other words, gladly leave out of God's hand. So once you're in God's hand as a heathen, you're going to be cast away. That's what he's saying there. The heathen would gladly flee from the Lord if he could get away from him in death, but they can't. So anyway, that's what verse 22 is meaning there. Anybody got anything on 22? Or I'm sorry, 20 chapter 27. All right. Trucking right along, chapter 28. This really could be fit anywhere in this narrative. It doesn't really necessarily belong. I mean, it's not a following narrative of chapter 27, but this is a discourse on concerning wisdom and finding wisdom. And Job was going to use the metaphors of mining for gold or mining for silver or precious stones and compare that to the mining or the search for wisdom. And you'll see those mining terms and mining metaphors throughout these verses here, and how a man will dig deep into the earth to get riches, and how much further and harder it is even to find wisdom. So this is what chapter 28 is about. I may interrupt just a couple of times, but it goes pretty quickly here. So verse 1 of chapter 28.
Job 28. Surely there is a vein for the silver, and a place for gold where they refine it. Iron is taken out of the earth, and brass is molten out of the stone. He setteth an end to darkness, and searcheth out all perfection. The stones of darkness, and the shadow of death. The flood breaketh out from the inhabitant, even the waters forgotten of the foot. They are dried up, they are gone away from men. As for the earth, out of it cometh bread, and under it is turned up as it were fire. The stones of it are the place of sapphires, and it hath dust of gold. There is a path which no fowl knoweth, and which the vulture's eye hath not seen. The lions, whelps have not trodden it, nor the fierce lion passed by it. He putteth forth his hand upon the rock. He overturneth the mountains by the roots. He cutteth out rivers among the rocks, and his eye seeth every precious thing.
Notice here all these mining terms, and even so, for centuries or for millennia, men have been mining the earth for precious stones. And I've never been in a coal mine. Has anybody ever been in a coal mine? You have? You see pictures, and they've got their headlights on, and I've never been in that. I've been into some caves, but every cave I've ever been in has had electricity and an elevator. Well, what was the one? I don't think you were with us. Anybody been to Bonatera, Missouri, to the mine there? It's a big lead mine. It's huge. They've got lakes in there in those mines that they've got pontoon boats on that you can take a ride on a pontoon boat. It's amazing. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. And that's the way the Bonatera mine was. It was all hand dug, just looking for lead. But yeah, if you ever get down, that's in eastern Missouri. But for all of history, man has dug in the earth looking for precious stones. And again, this is a comparison to how wisdom is. Sadly, a lot of people don't spend much time looking for wisdom, but because I think perhaps it's a little more difficult than what people want to put the work into. But anyway, this is what he's talking about here. There are places where the lions haven't been, where what's it say there? The vulture's not seen. All these places that all the wildlife is not seen. Verse 11, I believe.
He bindeth the floods from overflowing, and the thing that is hid bringeth he forth to light. But where shall wisdom be found? And where is the place of understanding? Man knoweth not the price thereof, neither is it found in the land of the living. The depth saith, It is not in me, and the sea saith, It is not with me. It cannot be gotten for gold, neither shall silver be weighed for the price thereof.
You notice there, verse 15, you cannot buy wisdom. You can't get it with gold or silver. There's no price on wisdom. It just takes work and patience, which we'll see here at the end of the chapter here. Verse 16.
It cannot be valued with the gold of Ophir, with the precious onyx or the sapphire. The gold and the crystal cannot equal it, and the exchange of it shall not be for jewels of fine gold. No mention shall be made of coral or of pearls, for the price of wisdom is above rubies. The topaz of Ethiopia shall not equal it, neither shall it be valued with pure gold. Whence then cometh wisdom? And where is the place of understanding?
All right, with that, I'm going to stop there. I want us to turn to 1 Kings chapter 3. First Kings chapter 3. This is Solomon asking the Lord for wisdom. We'll see something played out here, and then we'll go to a couple other verses. 1 Kings chapter 3, beginning in verse 7. Now, this is Solomon speaking, okay? And now, O Lord my God, thou hast made thy servant king instead of David my father, and I am but a little child. I know not how to go out or come in. And my servant is in the midst of thy people, which thou hast chosen, a great people that cannot be numbered nor counted for multitude. Give therefore thy servant an understanding heart to judge thy people, that I may discern between good and bad, for who is able to judge this thy so great people? And the speech pleased the Lord, that Solomon had asked this thing. So essentially, Solomon here is asking for wisdom. That's spelled out in detail in the rest of chapter 3 of 1 Kings. So here's Solomon asking God for wisdom. God grants him wisdom, and because of that, he gains riches far and above anyone else ever in Israel. All right? Now, with that being said, how does that apply to us? Well, go to James chapter 1. James chapter 1. James chapter 1, verse 5. If any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God, that giveth to all men liberally, and upbraideth not, and it shall be given him. Now, I don't mean to be unkind, but how many of us have prayed for wisdom this week? God, give me wisdom. Probably not. It's probably not something that we've thought about asking. But we read here, if you lack wisdom, let him ask of God. Now, perhaps we may pray for wisdom for a specific problem or issue that we're facing and dealing with, and so we want, but it doesn't say to just ask when you really think you need it. It just says ask. Ask, and he'll give to all men liberally. You want to really be smart? Ask God to give you wisdom. And he upbraideth not. In other words, God will not mock you. He will not punish you. He will not set you aside because you've asked for wisdom. He will give it to you liberally. Now, again, it's not like a lucky charm or a snap of the finger. But if we truly need wisdom and we want to get wisdom, we will ask the Lord for it. And it will be given to you. Now, look at James chapter 3, verse 17. James 3:17. But the wisdom that is from above, this is talking about from the Lord, is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, and easy to be entreated, full of mercy and good fruits, without partiality and without hypocrisy. And the fruit of righteousness is sown in peace of them that make peace. So the wisdom that God gives is pure, peaceable, gentle, easy to be entreated or used, full of mercy, good fruits, without partiality, without hypocrisy. So you don't have to go digging for it like you do gold. Now, I've never had anybody ever panned for gold at a tourist trap. Yeah, I've never done that. I just imagine, you got to pay $20 to go swish a pail around in some water, and they're back there, oh, here's our gold. We got it here in our cash register. How many people actually walk away from those places with anything? Yeah. Well, I know. That's what I mean. You get a bucket full of rocks. Well, there ain't no gold in there. Marengo Cave, yeah. Nope. Apparently Alexis is paid to look for gold. Oh. $20 for a gold painted rock. Yeah. Yeah. Huh. Did you find any? Yeah. People in what was it? 1849 was already there. That was San Francisco, wasn't it? Though 40. Anyway, where did I leave off? Oh, well, I got to get back into. There's no way I'm going to get 5 chapters today. Anyway, I think verse 20 or verse 21. I'm sorry, of Job 28.
Seeing it is hid from the eyes of all living, and kept close from the fowls of the air.
Whoop.
Destruction and
22.
death say, We have heard the fame thereof with our ears. God understandeth the way thereof, and he knoweth the place thereof. For he looketh to the ends of the earth, and seeth under the whole heaven, to make the weight for the winds, and he weigheth the waters by measure. When he made a decree for the rain, and a way for the lightning of the thunder, then did he see it, and declare it. He prepared it, yea, and searched it out. And unto man he said, Behold, the fear of the Lord, that is wisdom, and to depart from evil is understanding.
There you go. Chapter 28, verse 28 is the key. The fear of the Lord is wisdom. Got a lot of people walking around that don't fear God, and perhaps even in being scared of Him, but also just in awe and amazement of Him. That's a fear that we're talking about here. And to depart from evil is understanding. Any questions on chapter 28? Hopefully we see the metaphors of the mining and how looking for gold is like looking for wisdom is like looking for gold. Yeah. That's right. I've heard that. That's what Larry Gatlin said, yeah. I wonder how they decided to name Larry Gatlin and the Gatlin brothers. Who are the other? I don't even know the other two guys' names. I know, but yeah. Instead of just the Gatlins. Anyway, how do we get on that, Terry? Or that's
That was you.
Yeah. No, that was Ron's fault.
No, you named who said it, sung it.
Yeah.
So
Well, now I've just got
lesson.
back to the lesson. Yeah, 3 more chapters. We may not be able to do it, but we'll try. Now, chapter 29, 30, and 31 again is one long narrative, but this is the panorama of Job's life. Job is going to talk about what he used to be. He used to be a judge. He used to be respected. People would come to him for his opinion and advice. He would provide for the poor and the needy. He would give out his riches to widows and those in need. All of these things Job was able to do, and so he did them. But then the affliction came. He lost all of his riches. And by the end of this narrative, or in the middle of this narrative, all he had was the Lord. He had lost everything else. And we can say he didn't even have any friends because they had actually turned on him. And then Job doesn't know it, but he will get his glory back. But this is just kind of the way Job was prior to this affliction and what he is going through at this particular time. So it takes these 3 chapters, but again, it's one long narrative. So I'm not necessarily going to stop it very often. I say that, realizing we got about 20 minutes. So we'll see how it plays here. Chapter 29, verse 1. This is a panorama of Job's life.
Job 29. Moreover, Job continued his parable and said, Oh, that I were as in months past, as in the days when God preserved me.
Now, I will say, with that statement in verse 2, kind of gives us a clue that perhaps Job's affliction has lasted a couple of months anyway. Now, I will say earlier in this lesson, I said we didn't know how long this lasted on Job, but at least here we get a picture that perhaps it was multiple months. Now, whether that's 2 months or 28, we don't know, but months have passed. All right, so understand that. Whereas prior I've said we didn't know, this may give us a glimpse into the, we all think we can probably endure anything for a couple of days. But as Job, we see here, perhaps he's suffered this for months. Verse 3.
when his candle shined upon my head, and when by his light I walked through darkness, as I was in the days of my youth, when the secret of God was upon my tabernacle, when the Almighty was yet with me, when my children were about me, when I washed my steps with butter, and the rock poured me out rivers of oil, when I went out to the gate through the city, when I prepared my seat in the street, the young men saw me, and hid themselves, and the aged arose and stood up.
So the young men, they were fearful of Job because he was the judge, but the aged, they would stand up in respect. That's talking about his steps with butter and the rock with oil. That's rich. If you had butter to put in front of you as you walk, that would mean you were rich. Kind of like having a silver dust behind your refrigerator, or the dust of gold. You were rich if you had that. And he's using that metaphor. I was rich. I had it all. And again, even in the time that Job had it all, he loved the Lord and served the Lord and was righteous before the Lord. So God's not left him. God has just allowed everything to be taken away from him. But in the ultimate end, God never left Job. And Job is in and back and forth, whether, admitting that, yes, God is with him, and then here feeling like God has left him because look at what I used to be. We all go through that at times. When we're down and out, we feel like, well, God's really, boy, he's really given up on me. Yes. Yeah, where was the rest of the people? Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, true. Yeah, you had friends like those three, but perhaps, as Daniel mentioned a few weeks ago, perhaps these three friends confronted him because they were getting some type of benefit from Job. Maybe they really weren't friends at all.
Maybe they're the ones who did the dust.
Yeah. Verse 9, I believe.
The princes refrained talking, and laid their hand on their mouth. The nobles held their peace, and their tongue cleaved to the roof of their mouth. When the ear heard me, then it blessed me, and when the eye saw me, it gave witness to me. Because I delivered the poor that cried, and the fatherless, and him that had none to help him. The blessing of him that was ready to perish came upon me, and I caused the widow's heart to sing for joy. I put on righteousness, and it clothed me. My judgment was as a robe and a diadem. I was eyes to the blind, and feet was I to the lame. I was a father to the poor, and the cause which I knew not I searched out. And I brake the jaws of the wicked, and plucked the spoil out of his teeth. Then I said, I shall die in my nest, and I shall multiply my days as the sand. My root was spread out by the waters, and the dew lay all night upon my branch. My glory was fresh in me, and my bow was renewed in my hand. Unto me men gave ear, and waited, and kept silence at my counsel. After my words they spake not again, and my speech dropped upon them. And they waited for me as for the rain, and they opened their mouth wide as for the latter rain. If I laughed on them, they believed it not, and the light of my countenance they cast not down. I chose out their way, and sat chief, and dwelt as a king in the army, as one that comforteth the mourners.
Job had a right, I suppose, to be nostalgic for the past and how he was and how he had things and the respect that he garnered. It says there that princes wouldn't even speak to him, because they were in awe. There's just some people, I suppose, when they're in the, it'd be like, I go back to working, plant manager was coming down. So, of course, if the plant manager came down, he wanted to talk to everybody. So everybody came in, and we may have chit-chatted, but once he started talking, nobody else really said anything. Now, maybe because maybe we were in awe, or maybe we just didn't have anything to talk to him about. I don't know. But this is the same way Job was. He was like the plant manager that comes in and nobody speaks because royalty is here, so to speak. And so Job has a right, I think, to look back and think, boy, look at what I used to be. Now, again, at this point, Job doesn't know how his end is going to be, but we know by the end of the book that Job gets double what he had prior, and we'll see that played out in a few weeks here. But chapter 30, the narrative continues.
Job 30. But now, they that are younger than I have me in derision, whose fathers I would have disdained to have set with the dogs of my flock. Yea, whereto might the strength of their hands profit me, in whom old age was perished? For want and famine they were solitary, fleeing into the wilderness, in former time desolate and waste, who cut up mallows by the bushes and juniper roots for their meat. They were driven forth from among men, they cried after them as after a thief, to dwell in the cliffs of the valleys, in caves of the earth, and in the rocks. Among the bushes they brayed, under the nettles they were gathered together. They were children of fools, yea, children of base men, they were viler than the earth. And now am I their song, yea, I am their byword.
He describes all these young people that have derision against Job now, that mock him and point to him and perhaps laugh, and talking about how they live as basically as wild beasts. They're the children of fools, verse 8. And he says, now, I'm their song. They make mockery of him. They point and laugh. And whereas before, they respected him. They didn't even speak because he was better, or not, maybe not better, higher than they were. Verse 10.
They abhor me. They flee far from me, and spare not to spit in my face.
So they get far away from Job, but when they're close, they spit on him, essentially.
Because he hath loosed my cord and afflicted me. They've also let loose the bridle before me. Upon my right hand rise the youth. They push away my feet, and they raise up against me the ways of their destruction. They mar my path. They set forward my calamity. They have no helper. They came upon me as a wide breaking in of waters. In the desolation they rolled themselves upon me. Terrors are turned upon me. They pursue my soul as the wind, and my welfare passeth away as a cloud. And now my soul is poured out upon me. The days of affliction have taken hold upon me. My bones are pierced in me in the night season, and my sinews take no rest. By the great force of my disease is my garment changed. It bindeth me about as the collar of my coat. He hath cast me into the mire, and I am become like dust and ashes. I cry unto thee, and thou dost not hear me. I stand up, and thou regardest me not.
You see here how Job's feeling sorry for himself. You know, everybody's mocking me. Now, perhaps that was an exaggeration. The Lord has left me. Oh, I'm here all by myself. Now, again, we can begin to feel that way ourselves, but we're going through this lesson to help us understand that while emotion is a strong human element, the truth doesn't change. And if we belong to the Lord does not leave us. The Lord may cause us to go through stuff that Job's going through, but the Lord will be with us just like he was with Job. Although at this point, Job feels like God has abandoned him. But we all understand, because we know what the book says, that wasn't the case. And we also seen throughout this that Job has this feeling of abandonment by God, but also understands that God's his only hope. So a range of emotions Job has here. And sometimes I think we can get to feeling sorry for ourselves to the point where we make things to be, probably think things are worse than they really are. Verse 21, I believe.
Thou art become cruel to me. With thy strong hand thou opposest thyself against me.
It's talking about God against
Thou
Job.
liftest me up to the wind. Thou causest me to ride upon it, and dissolvest my substance. For I know that thou wilt bring me to death, and to the house appointed for all living. Howbeit, he will not stretch out his hand to the grave, though they cry in his destruction. Did not I weep for him that was in trouble? Was not my soul grieved for the poor? When I looked for good, then evil came unto me.
You ever heard the phrase, no good deed goes unpunished? That's kind of what Job's thinking here. I looked for good, but all I found was evil. I've had that happen a few times. You do good and end up paying for it somehow. Verse 27, I think, or 26.
And when I waited for light,
Oh.
there came darkness.
27.
My bowels boiled, and rested not. The days of affliction prevented me. I went mourning without the sun. I stood up, and I cried in the congregation. I am a brother to dragons, and a companion to owls. My skin is black upon me, and my bones are burned with heat. My harp also is turned to mourning, and my organ into the voice of them that weep.
All right. That's where we're going to stop because I'm out.